Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I will be talking about 808 processing. So I'm going to kind of be focusing on how to get those really hard or really fat 808s that you hear in, professional tracks. So kind of, basically turning your 808s from sounding like this to sounding something like this. But of course you'll be able to kind of customize things to make them sound pretty much how you want them to sound. Now, the first thing I want to mention is if you want to do this kind of processing and you have a layered kick with your 808, you want to do this processing before the sidechain. So usually you'll have a sidechain that kind of clears the sub a little bit under your punchy kick. And doing this processing, if you do it after the sidechain, it will pretty much negate the effect of the sidechain, or it will at least reduce it significantly. So you want to do all of this before the sidechain happens. So yeah, I'm going to start off with this sample here, and I'm going to play it on a very low note. So you might not even really be able to hear this, depending on the frequency response of your speakers. But that's why you want to process the 808s. So you can hear them on speakers that you normally really won't be able to hear this bass on. That's at least part of the reason why you want to process. So the main part of processing an 808 is adding some kind of distortion or saturation to add not only more sustain or more power to the sub, but also to add harmonics on top of that sub bass. So you can see if I look at the spectrogram over here, this bass is just one tone right now. And you can see the processed bass is quite a bit more. And so that's what adding the harmonics does. And you can hear how it really changes the sound. So there's no right way and there's no wrong way to process an 808. You could just add compression and it won't add harmonics, but in some cases you don't necessarily want the harmonics. But the focus on this video, of course, is kind of adding those harmonics. Now, there are two types of harmonics that you usually will maybe want to add to the bass. And I'll show these by using different saturation methods. So saturation is a type of distortion. It's softer than clipping distortion, and it sounds really nice on 808s. So I'm going to start off by adding a fruity wave shaper. And to add some basic saturation, all you have to do is kind of grab this middle point here and push it up. And the more you push it up, the more distorted the sound will be, the more harmonics you will add to the sound, and the fatter the sound will become. So you can hear this. As I increased that, it added more and more harmonics, and you could hear it getting fatter. And now if you couldn't hear the bass without this on, you should be able to clearly hear it, even on laptop speakers with this on. Now doing this adds odd harmonics only, which are essentially square wave harmonics. They're the harmonics that are present in a square wave. And these harmonics make it sound really fat, but you can also add even harmonics and the odd harmonics using different distortions. So one example is the Vox & Go tube amp. This one, you'll see I've turned the wave shaper off, and if I turn the drive up and the bias up, you can see that there are more harmonics. If I switch between these two, you'll see it more easily. You can see between these two, there's another harmonic added when the tube amp is used instead. And this will give it a harder or a more gritty sound. And you have to use a certain type of saturation or a certain type of distortion to get those even harmonics added into the sound. But a lot of 808s do just use the odd harmonics. So those are two different methods of saturating the sound to add different types of harmonics. And now I'm going to take a look at distortion. Because sometimes you want it to be a little bit, you want those harmonics to be more present, and distortion is probably a better way to go if that is the case. So I'm going to add fruity fast distortion, and you can hear what that sounds like. And so this is just a clipping distortion, and if I want to clip more, I can increase the pre-gain. But I'm going to keep it at the default settings and turn it to type B. And you'll hear this adds a lot of harmonics. It adds kind of a buzziness to the sound. And if you don't like how many harmonics the distortion adds, like you can hear it really adds quite a few harmonics. And that might get in the way of your synths. You don't have to worry about that because you can always add an equalizer. And you can filter off any of the higher frequencies that you don't really want. So you can filter this as low or as high as you want. It just depends on what you want the bass to sound like. Okay, so I'm going to keep it on distortion type B, because you can hear the harmonics stay around a bit longer. And I want them to stay around a bit longer. So this is the kind of thing you need to experiment to get the sound you want. So I'm going to keep it on distortion type B. And you might think that the harmonics aren't strong enough. And if this is the case, what you can do is you can actually boost the harmonics using the EQ. And you can hear how this really brings out that first overtone, which is actually the third harmonic, but it really gets that hard trap 808 sound from that. And if you want to, you can adjust the cutoff of this one. And I think that sounds pretty good, just like that even. And from here, you can keep experimenting. I'm going to take the tube amp effect, and I'm going to see what it sounds like to saturate it slightly. So you can hear that, adding a little bit of this tube amp kind of hardens it up a bit more. Makes it a bit more gritty, but if you don't want it to be gritty, then you can keep that off. It's just a personal preference. And then, if I wanted to, remember the type B distortion added some buzz. So I could add, the type B distortion after this and turn the mix way down. And just add a very slight buzz to the sound. And then, you could EQ that again to remove any frequencies that you didn't want. And you'll notice that I'm doing this all on one tone, one note is playing. I'm not changing the notes. And that's because when you do the EQs like this, if I change the note that I'm playing, it's going to change the sound. And you don't want that to happen, because you can see it's boosting this harmonic. But if I play another note, that boost isn't as much on the harmonic. So yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. You could also compress it a bit at this point if you wanted to, because if you look in the limiter, it has a nice curve to it, which is, it's a good thing. But if you want it to be a bit fatter, you can compress that just a little bit. And then increase the gain. So it's really up to you. So that sounds pretty good to me. And one last thing, we're pretty much done, but one last thing is, again, because of this reason, where if you change the pitch of that note, it's going to sound different. You probably will want to either export this or you can record it. I'm going to record it for the sake of the video. And then you can take that into your song and you will have that 808 to use. Because now when I pitch it a bit, you will hear it keeps the character the same as opposed to changing. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, but I will see you in the next video.